We good?
Good?
Thank you all for being here this morning. And before we begin, if we could, let's have a moment for silence and prayer. Merciful God, we thank you that you are ever present in every situation, in every part of your world, whether it be in a school building or in a home, on the streets, and everywhere. And Lord, we just pray that as we come together to consider what is best for our school system and for our students, that you would give us insight, that you would give us direction and purpose. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. I trust everyone has a copy of the spring 2023 policy updates, and that you have had an opportunity to review those. And as we go through them, of course, our purpose is to consider the policies as they are relevant to our particular situation, and to make proposals for revisions where we see that it would be to our school system's advantage to do so. Looking at the chart, the rubric, beginning on page 1 of 4. The first policy title is Professional and Staff Development. And we see that there are some notations in terms of what is strongly recommended for changing and updates. And then also, of course, there are adjacent to that, general statutes referenced to give us some direction as to what we need to do in terms of adjustments. And again, I'm not going to read the notations and the description and the suggestion there in the box provided there. You can do that yourself. Hopefully you've had a chance to do that already. But just to reference that as we go through the topics and the policy codes, a lot of it is evident to us already, but we do need to be reminded of our mission. And again, I'm not going to read this to you. I have highlighted some statements that perhaps we need to give further attention to and discussion. And the first topic, of course, is professional and staff development. Ongoing development opportunities for licensed and support staff and shall require participation in such development as appropriate. And then it goes on to address technology and its use in the delivery of the required curriculum in the educational program. There is a reference to mental health training. And again, a number of series of general statutes that support that topic as well as others. I do believe that we need to focus on some of the related issues, child abuse and related threats to child safety. Not that there is a major problem with that, but first and foremost, our children and their well-being and their safety is of utmost importance. And anything that the school system can do to provide an atmosphere, relationship, a setting that's going to be conducive to child safety and child health is paramount. We are not able to educate our children if they don't have the support that they need to be safe and to be healthy. Are there any questions, comments, and we'll take as much time on each topic and on each page as we need to. It goes on to self-improvement, and Dr. Williamson and I were just discussing, actually kind of reveling in what took place here yesterday. I was very impressed with the knowledge and the commitment, the insight, and all of the structure in delivering the curriculum to our students that our teachers obviously have internalized. And they didn't have to go to any kind of reference. It was all right here and right here, and the sharing just back and forth. And I was just quite astounded. I shouldn't have been, but I was quite astounded by all that I heard and saw yesterday, and that fits perfectly into what we're talking about today. Having that groundwork and having that dedication, and the connections that when additional services are needed for support, like child safety and child health, that all of our personnel have bought into that and are part of that network. And I went away just being thankful, number one, to be a part of all that's taking place here. I really am. And I hope you are too. I know you are. But this topic addresses that. Professional and staff development obviously is inherent in all that we are about. And I know that our central office staff are dedicated to providing the relevant opportunities and the time and place and the instruction that are appropriate. And again, a lot of this is self-explanatory. We'll spend as much time as we need, but at the same time, I think that most, if not all of these topics have been adequately addressed. I did make a notation on page 2 of 2 in this section, 1610, 7800, of course, where we are. And here again, and I'm alluding to under letter C, I underlined the last sentence there in that paragraph. A performance improvement plan could involve participation in a professional development program or encompass a variety of strategies that are related to professional growth or improving performance. And that goes back to what I just expressed. Any thoughts, any specific suggestions about how we might direct or implement? Dr. Wendy she does a super job, and as do all the rest of you. And I'm thankful for you.
Mr. Chair, I would say that, and to the assistant superintendents, we will continue to have a district-wide PD calendar that's all inclusive, so that individuals will know ahead of time what to expect. So am I correct that we're working on that? Okay. And then I want to make reference to the safety that you mentioned, Mr. Chair. We are sponsoring, help me Bobby, 10 resource officers for a workshop this summer. It is our intent, once they complete that workshop, that late July, early August, we will pull in the various agencies to sit down and have a conversation around safety and those needs. Bobby, you want to talk about that a little bit more?
I'm getting ready to grab the other one so I can do it. Yes, so we, as everyone knows, we have 4 different agencies that are representing as school resource officers in our district. So we are sponsoring 10 individuals to go to the school resource officer conference in Charlotte this summer. 6 will be from the sheriff's department, and we've split the other 4 up among the other 3 agencies within the county. So as Dr. Williamson shared, once those individuals come back, then collectively we're going to sit down and have a conversation about how to enhance our safety or what we need to do differently for the upcoming school year.
Further questions on that topic?
It's on. Just real quick, a point there at D, Dr. Carr, and I know y'all have the workshops and everything. That last sentence on D, page 2, to say, when y'all do your workshops, people's getting credit. So I don't think we have to say it, but it is good to have in here that it's not our responsibility if you need 3 hours for us to go, I guess, pay for you to get that time to renew your certificate. Because what is it still a 5-year? Is it still a 5-year span, or 3, or 40, to renew 5? So there's enough workshops going on that people can renew their certificate. And every once in a while, I think it comes up, we got somebody that needs this, and I don't know how much they might come here saying, well, you need to pay for me to go do this. But now this says we don't have to do that. That's not our responsibility. So I'm just glad it's in there.
Yes, and that statement is there, as you've just indicated, that it is up to the individual employee to keep his certificate current and to do the necessary training, get the necessary education to do that and accomplish that. Are there any further questions, comments on that particular section?
Mr. Gentry, I'm sorry, if we can, the change or addition in this particular policy makes reference to the new statute about Holocaust training. And I think Dr. Carr and Ms. Comisia may have a couple of comments on what that may entail. But then the addition there of 81.57 under A.
Yes, we have PD opportunities available for the past ongoing PD for the past year. They have had Holocaust training optional if they want to attend with NCDPI. This summer, we're also having NCDPI come in to have training. And one of the topics is sensitive topics. Of course, the Holocaust falls under that. So NCDPI will be here in July to have training for those teachers that signed up. We also have a revision team with the high school teachers this summer. And that's one piece that we will be discussing is the Holocaust elective for high school. For middle school, 7th grade, they incorporate the Holocaust. And one thing that we're trying to move forward with is incorporating the book called Night and the book Diary of Anne Frank to help them have that informational text piece, and also that they can get more information and knowledge about the Holocaust. So those are our upcoming steps.
And I would like to add that I personally am grateful that that training has happened or will be happening. it's something that it's difficult to read about, to look at what happened. But it's like some of the comments that I so appreciated yesterday about some of the terminology, language references. If we cover those up, guess what? It's likely to happen again or something like it. So I personally am appreciative of that initiative. Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Okay, as is our custom, do I hear a motion that we receive policy code 1610/7800 as presented with the additional comments and references? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The motion carries. Thank you. All right, moving on to dual enrollment. And of course, we do have a live example of dual enrollment in our early college, in that students are earning both high school credits for graduation as well as college credits to begin to further their career beyond high school. And this is, to me, is reinforcing that. And in red, there's the paragraph in red, the board will implement the Career College Promise Program in accordance with the Career College Promise Partnership Agreement as development. And it goes on and gives us a reference there. Dr. Williamson, do you have a
I do. I think
comment?
Dr. Barton is on the call, and he's really been our contact with the college in terms of CCP. Dr. Barton, are you online?
Yes, sir. I'm assuming this is referencing the new MOAs that we will combine between the public schools of Robeson County and RCC. In the past, we've had a MOA for just the early college, just CCP, and then one for CTE. We went to some PD, I think, back in March, where we're going to align those documents. Dr. Carr has already put that on the calendar for next week. So I think we're going to do the work to make sure those documents are aligned, that the school district and its interests are best served.
And we've started conversation around expanding those opportunities. Now students have to attend there at the college. Our future plans is that those instructors will teach some of those classes on the high school sites, correct?
Yes, sir. President Singler is very interested in taking away one other barrier, which in some situations can be transportation, even though we do provide that in almost all those situations. And she hopes to pilot a program next year where we can bring she said either one of her instructors or she'll hire an adjunct to come out and teach one of those classes there on our campus. And her concern with Information Highway, it's great, but she wants them to be able to form those relationships on a daily basis with our students. And so we're excited to be able to hopefully try and pilot that with a school next year.
Great. Also, I want to point out the ongoing conversation, and Dr. Carr, you can address this, between CCP classes and AP classes, and in terms of quality points and what students are opting to do. Talk about that, please.
So what we're finding is when we compare CCP and AP courses, majority of our students are taking the CCP courses because they can get that credit right away for college, and they're opting out of AP courses. And so if they take AP courses in CCP, they're getting the same quality points, so they don't see the purpose behind taking some of our AP courses. So that is still heavy in CCP over AP. And so we're still looking at different options for some of the courses through the College of Math and, School of Math and Science and those types of things, where we can offer some other opportunities that some of our students may be interested in.
Dr. Williamson, and sometimes these terminologies I still get confused on. Is this taking care of where we have had issues with our CTE and RCC's programs, kids taking it under us or taking it under RCC? Does this take care of that?
It really addressed that. You know, the conversation is we can't duplicate programs,
right.
so that's automatically taken care of. And what we offer in most cases would be those level 1 and level 2s, because again, we're not a degree-bearing institution on the diploma. So yes, that's taken care of.
Okay.
I'd like to go back to the advanced placement concept. And of course, that's been around for a long time. Am I live? Okay. And it's still important, as you have just said. However, you also mentioned a transition, that there is more emphasis and students leaning more towards the career college credit. I guess my question is there a way to bring those two together where advanced placements could somehow be a piece of the puzzle as well in some type of form?
Right now, I don't believe the AP classes could be part of that piece. Honestly, most of them are not even taking the test anymore with the AP class. So even if they're enrolling, what we're finding is they're not taking the test to get the credit. They're only doing it for the quality points. And so that's where we're going with the School of Math and Science, to see if there's some more that we can get into some courses that they may be more interested in, to try to get them to take some of the AP courses and actually receive credits for it and take the assessment.
And also, Dr. Carr, for those students who plans are to enter the four-year institution directly from high school, those AP classes are critical for those decisions to be admitted. So it still has a place. Right.
Okay. Dr. Barton, is there anything else that you need to add?
No, sir. I think that's it. I think the biggest bang for our buck with AP right now is probably going to be our 9th and 10th grade students, which is why the partnership with the School of Math and Science makes so much sense. Because typically it is our junior and senior students that take advantage of the CCP program with RCC. But I really do think we want to see some movement on those numbers with the School of Math and Science.
I am appreciative of the initiative for the bringing the courses. In some cases, this is, in my mind, is a relatively, or is a new initiative to bring that on the campuses of the high schools. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, sir. That is the idea, that we'll be bringing them out to the high schools, hopefully, or at least one, and then maybe more later during the third period of the day, hopefully.
To me, that's exciting. Thank you. Are there any other questions, comments? And I have this highlighted as well, and obviously this is self-evident, is the syllabus. We all need a track to run on. We need to know in advance what the expectations are and what the requirements are. Again, that's self-evident, but I'm glad that that is at least referenced on page 2 of 2, near the bottom of the, or about midway of the page. Are there any other questions, comments? Not, do I hear a motion that we accept policy 3101
Make a
as part of
motion.
our,
I make a motion to accept 3101, and then after I just want to make one quick question and comment, but I make a motion.
the second?
Second motion.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Mr. Craig?
Let me just make sure I understand. This bringing these classes where we're going to bring this group in to teach them on campus. This AP classes, right? Am I saying that right? Or what are we going to teach on campus?
Those are the RCC classes.
RCC
Mhm.
classes that would be taught on our campuses, okay?
The AP classes that we're talking about are through the School of Math and Science,
Okay.
and they're virtual.
That's okay. They're virtual.
Mhm.
Because tell me if I'm wrong, one of the issues we got to teach in AP classes, we got 5 kids wanting to take the class, and the principal then has to put a teacher in that class for a semester, which is a problem with scheduling. So all of that we can get that way, the better off that I think we'll be. That gives the kids those opportunities to take the classes. Okay. Thank you. That was it.
Thank you for that, Mr. Gray. That clarifies it for me as well. Okay. Moving on then to section policy code 4023, 7233, pregnant and parenting students and education for pregnant and parenting students and employees. See that there is a line through the education for, but if you, having read the content, I saw the reason for that. Essentially, the red description in red states that there will be no discrimination or harassment in the workplace related to pregnant and nursing employees. And it goes on to state that accommodations will be provided for certain actions and certain necessary relationships that need to take place on campus. And it does get specific in some instances, like the expressing of milk and related situations and factors.
Ms. Gentry,
Yes, sir.
if I may, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve this policy 4023 and 7233, because I'm sitting here smiling. I had to do this 20 years ago. This is nothing new. It's been around a long time. So it's that we've had to make accommodations at schools for, from what I read in this year. So I'll make a motion that we approve this.
And moved and seconded, we accept this policy 4023, 7233. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. We'll move on. Next is integrity and stability, 4310. And I would hope, and again, I believe that the behaviors that are listed in section A, I'm not going to say that they're not happening. Obviously, if they have happened, thus the need for addressing prohibitive behavior. But I guess my point is that all of our employees and students have received specific instruction, know what is expected of them in terms of demeanor and behavior, ethics, proper professional and scholastic conduct. And this is reiterating what we already know. There is a statement in red in number 2. And now that when I see the term artificial intelligence, several different applications come to mind. And it is, in this day and time, I'm going to say tempting to copy something directly from the internet and then in total or in part representing it as part of one's own. And again, that is prohibited. That's my comment. Are there any other comments? It goes on to mention, not mention, but to outline, spell out the consequences and give a reference to section D of policy 4300, which is already in place on student behavior policies. And there is a statement requiring, when I say the superintendent or designee shall list in the code of student conduct a specific range of consequences. You know, and we've always gone under the mantra, if there's an expectation, there's a related consequence that has to be aligned with that. You know, that's inherent in everything that we do. I'm just pointing that out. That's backing up that expectation. So, any comments, thoughts, questions?
Chair, I offer a motion that we approve policy with the revision 4310, please.
I'll second.
Thank you, sir. It's been moved and seconded that we approve policy 4310 as presented. All in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Motion can't carry, passes. Moving on to automated phone and text messaging. There is
Mr. Gentry,
yes, sir.
are the changes listed here in 5008? Are these all recommendations from the School Board Association?
That's my understanding. Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, if there's no objection, I'll go ahead and make unless you want to discuss, but I'm ready to make a motion whenever you get finished with your comments.
My question, and this out of my ignorance, how much of this content are we implementing currently in terms of our communication structure? You know, I know there's obviously communication about school closings. You do a wonderful job, Mr. Bobby, of letting us know. I say us, the board, but obviously it needs to go beyond the board, and I know you have other channels for doing that. I guess my question is, with the up-to-date technology that's available, are we addressing all of the specific needs? And let me just point out one that I found out through my grandson, who is in Cumberland County. And whenever there's this upcoming school event, i.e. PTA meeting, an athletic or some other school-related event that invites parents, there's the information and the invitation is delivered through the automatic messaging. Are we doing that currently?
Yes, so this particular policy, I shared it with Ms. Horn, Ms. Brendelen, and Cole, and they've reviewed this and the way that we are communicating with our parents through our Thrill Share app, either phone calls there or via text messages. We're following this particular policy as it's written. And I don't know if they want to make any additional comments as they've looked over the policy or not.
Yes, We regularly text our parents, and it's something me and Brenda have been working on doing better with as far as letting them know about family engagement events, robocalls, and we are working with ThrillShare to streamline our process and to make sure that, we can improve on some of those as far as the opt-out policy as well. Do you want to make any comments, Brenda? Okay. That's all I have.
Ms. Seeley, if you will address number C, under C, number 1, we do get a lot of requests to use our system for commercial and advertisement for marketing. Will you address that? We do not.
Right. We just use them for school activities. We don't use it to promote campaign, political things or personal agendas of that kind. We keep it strictly to district-related events and family engagement events.
In the event, and unfortunately, we hear these events are taking place every day on campuses across the country, unfortunately. But if there is a real or perceived threat of some type of intrusion, and we know there is a wide range of what that intrusion may be, and obviously there's not a need, nor should it happen that this be in mass. But what I'm asking is, what's in place to keep what is threatened or the possibility of happening within the scope and context of the need to know basis and not extend beyond that? I guess if that makes sense, that's what I'm trying to.
So whenever we have a situation on campus, depending upon what it is, we do not do a call out until that situation is contained for whatever reason. If school goes on lockdown, we're not going to call the parents. We're going to call once we resolve the issue. And same thing, every time that we've found a weapon or a gun on campus, those call outs have been made to make parents aware that, hey, this situation occurred. It is under control. And just so we're being very transparent in what happens on our campuses.
And at the district level as well, this summer, we plan to sit down and really comb through some ways that we can improve safety here at the district level as well, as far as if things happen with district central office employees.
Mr. Chair, I might add to that. The challenges that we're facing now is because of cell phones in buildings. So there's unofficial communication that often goes out by way of student cell phones that really challenge the official communication coming from the district. So we really have to just work hard to try to get things resolved so that we can put out that official notification. Bob, you might want to talk about, but that's a major challenge
I was going to ask
for
that
us.
next.
Great.
Yes, because there are times that parents have called us about a situation at school and it's not even true. So again, and we've had folks in the public that call and report situations at campuses that aren't even true. So that's why we believe it's very important that as soon as something happens that is confirmed and we've resolved that issue, that we're communicating to our parents to let them know that this is what occurred on campus. So again, there's not that miscommunication coming from students. But again, we do not communicate in the midst of a situation because, again, just imagine the chaos that could cause if you've got parents coming there wanting to check kids out while the school is trying to deal with the situation.
And I'm going to follow one more time, and this speaks from experience, somewhat antiquated, maybe more than somewhat, walkie-talkies. And I know that the administrators still use walkie-talkies, and I know there are different channels on the walkie-talkies. And I also know that the electronic transmission and reception can, unfortunately, end up being part of the problem in a very real kind of way, and I won't go into that. But it gets back to what Dr. Williamson said about isolating the communication so it does not leak out to other mediums, devices, because you could get a really confused, convoluted situation that could be dangerous. So if I have a question in all this, is that is there work being done to isolate communication where it doesn't bleed out into other mediums? If you kind of get what I'm saying. And I'm trying to get away from the walkie-talkie because I know, it's still needed, but there are some potential problems which we know about with those.
So one of the things that the state is providing us is called a RAVE panic button app that will be available for all school employees to place on their device. And we're going to work with principals and administrators on that this summer. So if there is a situation in a particular part of a building, that school personnel could then directly communicate with the principal through that particular app.
Perfect.
And it's not on student cell phones. This is only for employee cell phones.
That's exactly what I was hoping to hear.
So we will implement that at the beginning of next school year.
Thank you. Perfect.
Mr. Chairman, may I add, and Bobby addressed this, we get a lot of questions from parents and saying you're not transparent. Well, if there's criminal charges pending or active charge, we are restricted in terms of communicating that out, and parents don't understand that at some point. Once we turn an issue over to law enforcement, then it's on law enforcement. Talk about that because we get more pushback, but we're not at liberty if it's an active investigation to share anything.
That's correct. So whenever there's our school resource officers witness criminal activity, or we turn criminal activity over to our resource officers, as Dr. Williamson shared, it then becomes out of school personnel hands. So whatever criminal investigations taking place, we are not even privy to that information based upon the privacy of those students who are involved. So there are times when parents request, if something happens on campus and the students are charged, they're requesting information on those charges, and we can't share that with them because then it's a legal action. It's not a school action.
If I may, I know it's not part of this, but I improved communication by way of radios on our buses. Dr. Kuzma, talk about that, because that is really a major move for this district in terms of finding lost kids, et cetera.
Yes, we're nearing completion within the next week or two with the install of radio communication. Sometimes, Mr. Gentry, low tech is the way to go in this way, in shape and form. We've actually tested it out on several of the routes. Several of the bus drivers have actually gone on and used them, and we've had to address that because it's only used for emergency purposes to aid in communication, sometimes where cell phones aren't able to reach in our area, especially in the south end. And so that project is actually nearing completion. All of the radios will be on our buses, of both yellow buses and activity buses, so that in case of emergency, we'll be able to communicate with those drivers in an easier way. We will be rolling out protocols during this summer and be going over that with assistant principals and bus coordinators for that. Other districts already use this technology or already have them, and so it's nothing new for our region to be able to use this to increase the safety of our students.
Will this technology be installed, hardwired on the buses?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Everything's already been installed. Actually, the crew actually came through and did antenna work probably a couple of months ago, and they're finishing up the radio units actually this coming week. They've worked on weekends and worked in multiple scenarios in order to make sure that this is a completed project before the end of June.
Thank you.
Mr. Gentry,
Yes, sir.
I have a question. And it's just dealing with consistency. It's not nothing about writing here. I think Ms. Horn and Dr. Carr, all of y'all send out stuff from the central office that needs to be robocalled, that takes care of the whole system. Then the schools can send out the PTA, and we got open house tonight. I don't know that we got a consistency countywide in what school A sends out and school B sends out. Because I hear comments about like, well, our school's sending this out, and I'm not saying we need any kind of policy here to do that. Just needs to be some conversation to where okay, schools, let's everybody send this out and make sure you set it up, because it's kind of tough when you hear school X is sending it out and then school Y's parents are wanting to know, well, why isn't my child's school sending it out? So that's just a thought for some communication that if we could get that worked on. Not saying put it in a policy that we require it, but I think we do need a consistency of doing that.
Um,
And after
Well,
saying
then-
that, I'll go ahead and second Mr. Terry's motion if there's no other discussion.
Okay. Any other discussion, questions? All in favor of concurring with policy 5008, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries. We will move on to policy 6315, drivers. Dr. Gooseman just illustrated a point, very good point. And I'm certainly glad to hear that about what's happening with communication with and among our bus transportation. I'm looking at what's stated in red in number 2 under A. Undergo and follow all training required by law governing school bus and activity bus passenger safety and comply with the safety practices set out in policy 6305. And then right underneath that, number 3, a hot button issue. You see signs everywhere. We're reminded over and over again about the use of cell phones. And as this states, also related technology while the bus is in motion. There again, unless the communication is necessary, and from what you stated, every effort, every step has been taken to make that communication piece safe. And that was one of my reasons for asking about the hardwired installation. We don't have to hold something and that kind of thing. So,
Mr. Chair, if I may, let me ask Dr. Guzman to come, and will you address our practice now in terms of this policy for safety and reporting?
All of these are we are already doing all of these. These are just standard updates that are coming through, especially with the driver part. It just reiterates with the Federal Motor Carrier Clearinghouse. However, these are standard practices that we are already doing within both our standard operating procedures.
Chair, with that, I offer a motion that we approve policy 6315, please.
is there a second? All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, no. Policy is approved. We will move on to 6330, insurance for student transportation services.
This is a policy that's just updating some of the language, changing from insurance into coverage to just for language purposes. We already provide this. We also do this usually in July when we bring forward contract transportation. We provide that information in your packet as well. So we are already, once again, covered and already doing this policy.
I'll make a motion that we adopt policy 6330 as amended.
Second that motion.
Been moved and seconded that we accept policy 6330 as presented with the revisions in red. All in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Motion carries. Move on to policy 6402, participation by historically underutilized businesses.
Mr. Duke, I have a quick question. What does the information in blue denote?
Mr. Terry, did you want to address that?
I was just wondering what's the difference between the blue text and the red. I know what the red text is and
Okay.
the black text, but the blue.
I do not know the answer to that. I don't know if anybody else does. I do have a comment. This bothered me a little bit. I know that we have a procedure, and part of that procedure is mandated to us by DPI, that there's a list of conveyors, businesses that are sanctioned, authorized, and I's dotted, T's crossed, that our school system is allowed to do business with. And I know and I'm going to use the term exception, and if I'm wrong, correct me. But I guess my point is, I don't know that we have enough wiggle room to do business with small businesses that are, and that's a large part of what this is addressing. Local businesses that would appreciate and that doing business with the school system would help them financially. But again, I don't know that we have enough wiggle room to really do this on a large scale. Am I off base with that?
You are not, because part of a concern is while we're obligated by law to advertise, receive bids, go through that process, and the law is clear, a reasonable bid, so you never have to receive the lowest bid. But the other part of the conversation is that company must be able to deliver in a timely manner that goods, services, whatever it might be. And so that's really one of our concerns. The work that we do, and Bobby, let's address this. We always ask, is that particular company bonded? That's our, coverage in terms of that. There is some language that says if you can get a guaranteed report of past performance, they don't have to be bonded. But our position continue to be, we don't want to deal with companies that's bonded. You want to address?
So a couple of things, Mr. Gentry, in that depending on the scope of the work, as Dr. Williamson stated, a lot of our companies have to have that particular bond in place to do the work on our campuses or our properties. But also we do a lot of our work through maintenances with local owned businesses, whether it's through HVAC, electrical, construction. So again, we are keeping our money local in that sense. But when we get to the larger projects, then yes, it may be that we have to step outside of Robeson County to find someone to do the work. And I think Mr. Hugh may want to add. Yeah.
One of the ways that we do address this, we say to those companies, when possible, sub out some of that work with those underutilized businesses. And we do that a lot. So we are conscious of this and we often make that request. You want to address that, but we do that a lot to include local business to sub that out through the contractor.
That is true. All those bigger contracts where they have to show local contractors that they will be
So, Mr. Gentry, if I can address Mr. Terry's point. So the difference in the red and the blue is the difference in the two attorneys making comments in the document. So the red is Chelsea, the blue is McKenzie. So
Thank you,
that,
Mr. Bobby. I appreciate
yeah.
that.
I'm sorry, McKenna. McKenna is the School Board Association.
So then what I'm hearing is it hinges on the nature and the scope of whatever action needs to be taken, whatever transaction needs to happen in terms of addressing that particular need. And you just illustrated the larger projects, ordinarily and usually require an organization, an institution, business that may not be available locally. Okay.
So also the hub reports, once a quarter, we had to submit a hub report to the Department of Administration with North Carolina. And in 20 years I have submitted that report, we have gotten no complaints from anyone, even the Department of Administration, about using various companies.
Thank you.
Chair, offer a motion that we approve policy 6402 with the revisions, please.
Been moved and second that we approve policy 6402 with the stated revisions. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, no. Motion carries. We'll move on to 6430, purchasing requirements for equipment, materials, and supplies. Sure.
Hugh and I have looked over this. He's also had a conversation with Erica about this particular policy, and the changes in red still fall within line of all of our purchasing or bidding processes that we currently have in place.
I make a motion that we adopt this policy 6430 as amended.
Been moved and second that we accept policy 6430 as presented. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries. All right, that takes us through several pages there. Our next policy title is teleworking. Policy code 7503.
This appears to be some standard language as outlined in red. It doesn't look like a major or substantive change to the current policy. So I would go ahead and I feel obliged to go ahead and make a motion that we adopt 7503 as amended.
Second that motion.
I just have just a brief comment. Obviously, when we were under COVID conditions, teleworking was pretty much the order of the day, with rare exceptions. And I guess if there is a question, is that for the most part, in the general scope of everyday instruction, and I realize this can apply to other areas as well, are, I guess I'll just put it in simple terms, are we back to business as usual in terms of our delivery methods and communication methods?
We are, Ms. Thompson, you want to address that, please? Answer your question, especially with the lifting of the COVID-19 requirements we are.
Yes, sir. And we did find out that students, do better in the classroom, but all teachers are back in the classroom, and the only virtual learning would be someone who is suspended, long-term suspension or something along those lines. But all students are expected to be in school, and all teachers are expected to be in school, all employees with the public schools.
Okay, I believe we have a motion that's been seconded to accept policy 7503. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries.
Ms.
Brings us-
Gentry, can I just
Yes.
have, excuse me, a
Yes,
quick question, just maybe the Dr. Williamson. It's not as much teleworking, but with the comment, okay, a student gets suspended for 10 days and we said they could still receive instruction. So are all our classrooms now to where, okay, that student's suspended, they contact the teacher and then the teacher goes live, or how are we doing that instruction in that particular case?
Combination of, Dr. Carr, you want to address that?
Most of the time it's through Apex, and then there's a few
Apex,
situations, yes, there's a few situations where it is a virtual session, but the majority is Apex.
You give me a quick one sentence thing on Apex.
Apex are online courses that the student would take in place of the course that they're currently taking to fill in the gap while they're out.
So they can do that and not have to have teacher assistants to do
Right.
it. Okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
And Apex is aligned to the standards.
So all the supervisors have gone through and reviewed the courses to make
Mhm.
sure there's alignment to the courses that students are taking at school.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, so Bobby, we've used Apex at the alternative school, been real successful, and it helped Mr. Craig address that need.
So as Ms. Thompson alluded to as well, we are using Apex at RAS for our alternative school for kids who are physically in that building. But we also have situations where in lieu of long-term, depending on what the child, the offense was at school, we put them on Apex to complete their assignments at home. And there are only a handful of those students.
And this applies to students who have been suspended short-term as well as long-term. Do we have any information, statistics, records about if they in fact are taking advantage of this and following through?
So
Is it
there's
being effective?
we have Dr. Hathaway and Dr. Cummings both send a report on a weekly basis to show students' enrollment into the courses, and also LAP tracks privately, LAP and RAS track each student while they're there. But those assignments are tracked so we can see all the time any student in the live session, how they're completing or if they're completing that work.
And also part of that is the tutorial opportunities through Apex that we take advantage of, and we'll provide as an end of the year report, that final report of the usage of that. So again, we're not suspending kids without the opportunity to stay connected to school, which means we never drop them out of, right, Bobby? Yeah.
To me, this is major. You know, again, I'm old school. I go back to the days you suspended a student. Mr. Craig's nodding his head over there. No telling where he is, what he's doing. You know, and at least there's no excuse now. And the follow-up piece, Dr. Hathaway and Dr. Cummings, to me, that's extremely important as well. That's my soapbox on that. Okay. Do we have a motion for 7503? Okay. I think we approved it, didn't we? All right. 7810, evaluation of licensed employees.
Mr. Gentry, I make a motion that we go ahead and adopt 7810 as amended.
Okay? Motion has been made that we accept policy 7810 as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. It is accepted. Brings us to policy 4130, discretionary admission.
Mr. Gentry, I don't see any changes in here other than in the cross references. They worked through something, so I make a motion to accept 4130.
Okay, it seems to be straightforward to
It's the
me as
same.
well. There is a motion. Is there a second to accept policy 4130? It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. 4130 is accepted. Moving on to policy 4155, assignment to classes.
Mr. Gentry, I would go ahead and make a motion to adopt 4155 because it looks like the changes are relatively minor.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries. Brings us to policy 4334/5035/7345, use of unmanned aircraft.
Mr. Gentry, other than the legal references, the notes at the very end, are there any other additional changes within these policies?
That is correct. Just changes in the legal references is all.
And if that's the case, I make a motion that we go ahead and adopt 4334, 5035, and 7345 as recommended.
Okay, I second that motion.
I do have a question. Do all of the operators of drones, and the way I'm hearing this language is that any operation of a drone on school campus should be for, number one, authorized and for a school-related purpose, not just somebody decide to go out there and fly an airplane around. Are they, and there is a reference, I don't know exactly where, to the insurance requirement. Are they required to furnish proof of insurance for operating a drone on campus? I didn't see where it stated that specifically, but are they?
North Carolina School Board Trust does provide liability coverage to us for drone use for our employees. We do have to report to them whenever we purchase a drone, no matter how small or how big, but it can only go up to a certain size. And I want to say it's no more than 5, maybe 8 inches in diameter, the size drone. Because once you reach over that threshold, you then have to have your FAA license. And as long as you stay under that, it can be me, you, anybody else. But we do have to report each drone that we do have or have purchased to the North Carolina School Board Trust for insurance purposes.
And Mr. Gentry, on page 2 of 6, the second paragraph does require the operator to provide proof of insurance to the principal or
Okay.
designate, superintendent or designate, sorry.
Okay, I see that now. Thank you. Okay. All right, I believe we have a motion on the floor. For 4334, 5035, 7345. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries. Brings us to 5028, 6130, 7267, automated external defibrillator.
Chairman, we do have AEDs in place. First responders and nurses are trained with that. And the only change is in terms of the references. Offer motion that we do approve this particular policy, 5028, 6130/7267, please.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve 5028, 6130, 7267. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Brings us to policy 6410, organization of the purchasing function.
Mr. Chair, it looks like with this one, also the only major changes besides a couple of periods are in the legal references. So I go ahead and make a motion that we go ahead and adopt policy 6410 as recommended.
Okay.
Second that motion.
Been moved and seconded that we accept policy 6410 as presented. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. All right, employee dress and appearance, 7340.
Okay, Mr. Chair, outside of the legal references, I offer motion that we approve policy 7340 as it addresses employees' dress and appearance, please.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we accept policy 7340, employee dress and appearance. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion passes. It brings us to policy 7650, employee travel and other expense reimbursement. And all of that is in black as well, except for the notation at the bottom of page 3 of 4, other resources.
Ms. Gentry, I'll make a motion that we accept 7650.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I second that motion. I will call our attention to item D under the policy in terms of advancement for travel expense. Please note that there is a cap of $500 if that becomes necessary.
And as I understand in the language as well, that obviously there's still an accounting process, i.e. receipts
That-
being produced.
That's correct.
All right. Did we get a second on that one?
Yes.
Okay. All right. It's been moved and seconded that we accept policy 7650 as presented. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Done.
Those opposed, no. Mr. Terry, I believe that you had requested a review of an additional policy, and I believe we have, Mr. Bobby, did you give us that information? Yes, I think we all have that in front of us. Thank you, Mr. Bobby. Policy development, 2410. I found this to be very straightforward and relevant.
Which policy are you making? 2410?
2410.
Right, it spells out how we can ask to modify a policy is what the 2410. So we have that in hand. So at this point, Ms. Terry, you want to share with us in terms of your thought behind modifying our policy of 5230, please?
5230, I mean, the policies that I am, or the changes that I'm suggesting are just three big things, essentially. It's defining research. So our current policy doesn't really define what research is. So I think it's important that we spell that out. So defining research is one. Number two is actually including a federally recognized IRB or institutional review board. I would like to propose making that change as well. And I essentially, if it's okay, I essentially just took some of the language from Wake County's policy and included there. So that's the second big change. And the third big change is including a process for us to make what I just termed a good faith effort to get some sort of IRB approval from the Columbia Tribe of North Carolina, because they have an IRB process as well. I'm not suggesting that we actually receive that approval, but I would suggest that I'm proposing that the researchers essentially seek that approval and show us or show the administration some sort of proof that they intended to do or received some sort of approval from the Lumbee Tribe of North Carolina. And I think that's vital because of our student population, which is over 50% American Indian.
Mr. Chair, we do have Ms. McKenzie from the law firm. Bobby, we asked her to address this issue in terms of if that's a fellow requirement, correct?
We did. We invited her to the meeting today. Cole, is she on? Yes. So Mackenzie, can you unmute and address this for us, please? No, we can't hear you, Mackenzie.
You might have to grant permission in your browser to use your microphone.
Can you all hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, can you repeat the question? I'm sorry, having technical difficulties.
Right. So can you address the issue of receiving or tribal consultation in terms of research projects that are conducted through the school system or when the individuals ask permission for research projects?
Sure. Let me pull up one second. Where's the ordinance? So it's my understanding that IRB approval is necessary in some circumstances. So typically it is when it involves human interaction. So you're conducting interviews or taking surveys or something like that. And then, or it involves confidential information. So student information that's confidential. As to the Lumbee Tribe's IRB approval process, it seems like if the subjects of the research are members of the Lumbee Tribe, then it would require approval. Does that help answer your question, or do you have any follow-up questions for me?
Yeah, we've had conversation now. So why would that be different from any research? And then does that mean we need to seek approval from every group? And I'll just be clear, I don't think that we put that restriction. It's not a requirement. In turn, part of it's presented as it's a federal requirement, which is not. My recommendation is going to be that we not modify policy 5230, but leave it the way that it is.
And Dr. Williamson, my question was along the same lines, that carte blanche, we need to have approval if we're going to ask students to participate in a survey of any kind. It needs to be parental consent.
That's correct. That's the law, that we don't need to go to an additional step.
If I can add to that as well, in terms of students, we also have policy 4720 that if we are going to survey students, then we must receive parental permission prior to that. So if there's any research project that is approved by the committee, then approved by the superintendent, it requires student input. There's also a policy that backs us there that we must seek parental permission first. And that is policy 4720.
So would you say that any research that's conducted within a school, maybe, for example, interviewing a principal, would that fall under the definition of a human subject?
My response to that would be, in most cases, that's simply a survey or questionnaire and would not. If I'm understanding part of the conversation is district-wide research, which we normally don't participate in. We are required with some grants that we receive to respond to a survey and a questionnaire as part of receiving that grant. We do have employees who are pursuing the doctoral degree that they want to be cleared to do research. We certainly don't want to complicate that process. And then again, but to my knowledge, we normally just participate in questionnaires and surveys. And a lot of those surveys are by way of DPI that we do. So I wouldn't say they're part of a human subject.
So yeah, the recommendation is just to anything conducted through the government or DPI would have an automatic waiver. So we wouldn't be including those. But we really, but in terms of our policy, we don't even define what research is, which is a major problem. So we at least need to define what research is, and if there's any research conducted that includes any interaction with our faculty, staff, or students, there needs to be some IRB process because there can be some ethical issues when we are dealing with human subjects, and also because of our student population, we need to have some good faith effort to make contact or gain their approval from the Lumbee tribe. So, I mean, if you take a look at Wake County's policy in terms of the way they defined research and the requirement for IRB, it's essentially exactly what I have here. And the only difference is that I included a good faith effort to seek approval from the tribe. So in my mind, it's pretty straightforward.
Mr. Gentry. Is Mr. Bobby, is it Miss McKenzie? Is that the attorney? Miss McKenzie?
Yes.
The policy we have now, what kind of research does that prevent us from doing?
So the policy doesn't apply to the school conducting research. It's an outside entity conducting research.
So
Is that your question?
Yes, someone coming to our school wanting to do research on a project, doctoral could be other things. If they come to the school, principal, superintendent, and go through that, would they be allowed to do it with the policy we have in place?
They would be able to submit an application, and then, you would go through the process that you have outlined in this policy to determine if they meet the criteria that are outlined.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I want to add, again, as we distinguish surveys, questionnaires, those kinds of things, research, and that research question, by definition, would be answered in that request. The other part of that is my practice, and as the policy spells out, the authority of the superintendent is to inform the board if there is a district-wide research request. That I would do. I would never approve any type of research project involving this district as a whole without approval from the board and you having knowledge of that. That's what our policy states. Our intent is to always follow the policy. Again, I don't see any reason to modify to include anyone in that decision-making process other than the board, our elected officials for the public schools of Robeson County.
I would also like to add that that we're not making major, it's not a huge substantive change, but also for individuals that are completing doctoral research, in order for them to get to the point where they're conducting surveys or or doing any sort of research within the district, they've already gone through the ILB process from their institution. So they've already approved, they've already received federal approved ILB from whatever institution they're attending. So that's not going to affect them at all because they've already received that ILB approval.
That's correct, and that's what our policy addresses in terms of the authority of the superintendent. Once that request is made, once there's evidence of that approval, that we can approve that, depending on availability of. As a practice for me, I've always capped that normally around 5 requests a year because you don't want to overburden individuals. Again, I think our policy is solid. It is inclusive of the board on any major district-wide research that we have a good policy in place and a good practice.
I would say that our policy doesn't even define what research is. So that decision is essentially left up to the administration to essentially say, okay, well, this is research and this is not research. So I would argue that we need to, at a minimum, define what research is. And then I would say that we need a solid rationale for saying, oh, well, we just don't need any approval from an institutional research board.
Thank you, Terry. And with Dr. Williams, I want to go back to what you just said. And I'm going to use an often used term, vetting and checks and balances. If I heard you correctly, any request for research would come to you first and then would be subject to board approval. Am I correct in that assumption?
That is correct. If that request is for district-wide research project on the district as a whole, which would be inclusive of all of our students. And again, so we don't need a separate independent ORB group that we would have to run that process through. Again, that is the determination of the board, in my opinion, and the way that the policy reads.
And Mr. Terry, I'm going to include you in this because you have addressed the definition of research, and I'll take that a step further. There ought to be, in my mind, there ought to be something in it for us as a system. Yeah, I understand the need for research and students and other authorized individuals doing research, but not just to fulfill some academic requirement. There ought to be some type of product that comes back to us that's useful in some way, shape, or form, and not just an academic exercise.
Right. You know, that common response of to add to the body of knowledge already in existence is part of that conversation. And again, the majority of what we deal with are survey questions linked to grants that we received and an evaluation of that grant. If indeed we did achieve our outcomes for continuation of funding, we do get a lot of questionnaires, again, which is not research. Very seldom do we receive any major requests from anyone to do district-wide research. But again, add through that body of knowledge normally is that. And those products, I'm not trying to sell products. Again, part of that is to know if it's effective and if we need to continue dealing with that product. Again, we have a good policy in place that addresses everything that we need.
And Mr. Gentry, for the purposes of this conversation and what in the draft policy that's added there, any federal or state agency would be automatically exempt from going through the IRB process. So if it's for a grant or anything that's already in place, they're exempt from this. So my point is, our district is going to be very attractive to external researchers, not just individuals completing research for dissertations or writing articles that add to the existing body of knowledge. Our district and our numbers and our student population is going to be attractive just because of our demographics. And my point is, if we go through a federally recognized IRB process, then we'll know exactly what's going to be happening after this research is complete. Are these companies coming in and conducting research to sell information? Are they conducting this study? So the purpose of an IRB is essentially to find out the qualifications of the researchers, exactly what they're asking, who's involved, and what's going to happen with this data after the process is complete. So I think it would be to our advantage to know exactly what is going on in terms of research within this district, and also at a minimum, we need to define what research is. So just take a look at Wake's policy. The way Wake's policy is written is it's for a reason. They've included IRB as part of the discussion or as part of the policy for a valid reason. And the way it is right now, that we don't even define research. It's just left up to the administration to say, oh, well, this is what research is and this is what it's not. So as a board, we need to really consider those aspects.
Gentry, I have a question. Any idea how many requests we've had for projects this school year? Any idea?
No, we have not had any, and
Any?
to my
Okay.
knowledge, and again, we would never approve
Mhm.
a company to do research.
Right.
I would never make that recommendation to the board. And again, I'll say what I've said this morning. I have full confidence in this board as part of their elected responsibility to look at any request for research and make a decision to move forward or not. And I would always bring that to the board. But we're never going to ask this board to approve research projects for some companies trying to sell a product. They can ask questionnaires and surveys, but in terms of research, and to my knowledge, that has never, and through my years, I have never had to deal with that because companies don't do that.
And I asked that because I thought that was the answer I was going to get, that or something very similar. I think over the years, it's just been minimal. Mr. Terry, I've read this and I'm going to say I still have questions about it. But I am one that we've had a policy in place that has worked. And I just don't think right now I could support if it's going through any organization as somebody that's going to be a review board for us for an IRB. Now, maybe that's something we've got to look at and consider, but I'm one that when other entities are brought in to review what we're doing, it causes me to take a pause. Why do we have to do it? And so I still would have to think about this and look at this a little more before I could endorse doing something like this, be it with the Lumbee tribe or be it with anybody. Like I said, we do this, our board makes votes, our superintendent, our principals, they make recommendations, they deal with this, but it comes back through us and we deal with it. So, for me, it's something I would have to look at a little farther.
Okay.
Even consider it.
If that's okay, I will go ahead and make a motion that we not vote on this right now. We can. I'll make a motion that we go ahead and consider this maybe for the next policy meeting.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Did everyone hear the motion from Terry? Okay, is there a second? Is there a second to that motion?
So my motion was to just table this. I can go ahead and just table this discussion for right now.
Do I hear a second? Okay.
Mr. Chair, now, protocol says the policy dies in that recommendation because of the lack of second.
Right.
Correct.
That is correct in protocol. Okay, there are two separate policies that are before us. As a reference. Okay, gotcha. Thank you. While I've got an opportunity, I would like to, is Mackenzie still on?
I am here.
And there may already be such information available, but, and I'll just ask the question straight out. Is there a DPI definition of what research, what constitutes research?
There's not a DPI definition, but the regulations regarding the IRB process provide a definition of research.
So there is an IRB.
Yes, and I want to clarify. So the IRB process, if a researcher gets IRB approval, that would not necessarily mean that you have to approve the project. The superintendent would have to approve it, or the board would. It would just be one of the criteria that the superintendent could consider in evaluating the application. So if it does have IRB approval, then that means, that IRB has reviewed the application, the research, the project, they vetted it, and they're saying, okay, it has our approval. And then when it gets to you and you see that it does have IRB approval, that would be one of the things that you could consider when you're evaluating the application. Does that make sense?
Yes. So what I'm hearing is there is not a pat or a certain definition of research, that it's flexible depending on the circumstances and purpose.
Well, so the IRB defines research as a systematic investigation, including research development. I love when they include the word in the actual definition. Anyway, research development, testing, and evaluation designed to develop or contribute to generalizable knowledge.
Okay.
So essentially, if we don't at least define what research is in the context of the public schools of Robeson County, that determination is just left up to the administration. So I think at minimal, we should define if there's no request or it's not that big of a deal, if there's hardly any ever requests to conduct research, then in my mind, the proposal that I'm making is a no-brainer if it's not really going to affect a whole lot.
Okay. In other words, there is not a particular all-encompassing definition to research. Research is obviously a very broad topic, so there are many applications, so it has to be decided on a per case basis. That's what I'm getting from it. I'm on track.
That's correct.
All right. Is there any further business to come before this committee at this time? Hearing none, do I hear a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Did we vote on I made a motion to table this conversation for the next meeting. Is that the one that you said that, I know the first one didn't get a second, so we didn't get a second on that one either?
About the table. We did. Mr. Chair, my understanding is that it failed for lack of a second.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Meeting is adjourned.